Welcome to Story Time. Today I have a book called One Candle. It's a Hanukkah story and is written by Eve Bunting and illustrated by Wendy Popp. This Hanukkah was like every other one. Our house was filled with food and family and delicious cooking smells. Our great aunt Rose is here. She's Grandma's sister. There's Mom and Dad, we 3 kids, and my uncle and his family. When Grandma and Grandpa arrive at our house, Dad gets to hug them first. Grandma brings the potato. When I was little, I thought it was to eat or to grate for the latkes that Mom makes, but it wasn't. Grandma puts the big brown potato on the plate in the middle of the table, and Great Aunt Rose leans across to touch it with a trembling finger. Her glasses are misted over. Poor Great Aunt Rose, my cousin Nancy whispers. She's crying again this year. You'd cry too if you were her, my big sister Ruth says. Why do you think she cries? We're going to find out. After sunset, we light one candle in the menorah with the shamash for the first night of the Hanukkah. We say prayers and take our places at the table. Dad piles our plates with sliced brisket and gravy. Mom passes the latkes and the sour cream and the dishes mounted high with applesauce. The candles in the menorah burn low, and shadows trembled on the ceiling. The table buzzes with conversation. I love all our holidays when we are all together like this. But maybe I love Hanukkah most of all. It does look like a special celebration, doesn't it? After we've eaten, Mom looks at Grandma. I think it's time, Mama. Grandma nods. Then Dad goes in the kitchen and brings back the things Grandma will need. Grandma takes the small knife and begins to hollow out the potato. We were all very quiet, even my cousin baby Sam, who has been fussing all through dinner, trying to pull off his bib, but he's quiet. We watch as Grandma piles the small pieces of scooped out potato onto her plate. Tell us now about the bad times, Mama, Mom says. Her voice is so soft and loving. We lean forward. We know that this story by heart, but we want to hear it again. To us, this story is Hanukkah. Grandma takes Great Aunt Rose's hand. Well, it happened when we were young. We were separated from our families and put into a camp. It was called Buchenwald. That was in Germany. There was a war on at the time, and the Germans didn't like the Jews. Why, my little sister, Bitsy asked, and I remember how, one by one, we'd all ask that same question. Baby Sam will probably ask it next. Grandma shrugs, and Grandpa says, the Germans didn't like a lot of people. It wasn't only the Jews. Grandpa wasn't in a camp. He met Grandma afterward when she came to America. The camp was like the worst prison you could imagine, Grandma says. We were always hungry, always cold. There were 7 women in our barracks, but at least Rose and I were together. Great Aunt Rose begins to whisper the names of the other women, the way you would say a prayer. Rose was 13. I was 12, Grandma says. Uncle Lion shivers. Just Ruth's age. We look at my sister Ruth and then at Grandma, trying to imagine. The older women worked in the fields, Grandma continues. Rose and I worked in the kitchens. We were small and thin. It's a marvel they even kept us. We helped cook for the officers. Grandma leans back in her chair and closes her eyes. Her chin quivers. All that wonderful food, but none of it for us. I looked around the table. I'm full from Mom's delicious cooking. And there are still leftovers. I can't imagine going hungry. Hanukkah was coming, Grandma says. We knew because we kept the dates on a hidden piece of paper. Working there in the kitchen, I had an idea. Little by little, I smuggled things out. A blob of margarine in a scrap of paper, small enough to hide in my hand. 2 matches. And on the day before Hanukkah, a potato. Not as big a one as this. I brought it out under my skirt. Grandma puts her hand over her heart. Oh, I was so frightened. I thought my chest would burst with fear. The guard at the door looked at me so suspiciously. Aunt Rose walked beside me. She gave me courage. Why do you think she was scared? I think part of it is because we know when we're doing something wrong, but the guards were mean. So Great Aunt Rose shakes her head. I had no courage to give you, Lily. You held me up, Grandma said. What would they have done if they'd caught you? Ruth asked. Great Aunt Rose gave a little moan. There, we were all right, Grandma says. She squeezes her sister's hand. Can you imagine a time like that? When we got back to the barracks, the women couldn't believe what I had done. A potato! Heaven! Were we going to eat it right away? No, that wasn't why I took the risk. Grandma looked around the table at each of us. We know why she took the risk. So you can see she's cutting it up and stuff. Okay, let's find out. I hollowed out part of that potato, the way I did with this one. Grandma touches the potato and stares down at it. We ate the pieces I'd saved. Nancy interrupts. Raw? Yuck. Grandma smiles and nods her head. Delicious. Better than any candy. Then we put the margarine I'd stolen into the potato, pulled a thread from Rose's skirt to make a wick, and lit the flame. She pauses. We had 1 candle for Hanukkah. That Hanukkah candle lifted us, Grandma says, and there are tears in her eyes. It lifted us up to the stars. Betsy screwed her face. How could it lift you, Grandma? In our minds, sweetheart, and in our hearts. Now we watch as Grandma pours oil into the potato and lights the wick I've made from twisted threads. We have a flame, and we have a candle. Grandma wipes away her tears, and we all stand up. May I take it, I ask? Yes, Grandma says. I set the candle on the windowsill, and it glows back on itself and in the dark glass. We go outside. Dan has switched off all the house lights, and the Hanukkah candle has burned itself away. On the windowsill is this one steady flame. My sister Ruth whispers close to my ear, "Why do you think Grandma wants to do this every year?" I shrug my shoulders because I really don't know for sure. But I think it has something to do with being strong in the bad time and remembering it in the good. And for the women in Grandma's barracks and the others who didn't live to come out. Grandpa passes the little glasses of sweet wine to the grown-ups and the grape juice to us. We raise the glasses towards the flame. Lakyam, Grandma says, to life. To life, we chant. And in that moment, we are lifted to the stars. Now, I believe that's to be a true story, but we also need to remember that just because we all believe differently, the Jewish people believe their ways, and me as a Christian, I believe my ways, we all still believe in a God, and we all still need to love one another and respect each other's faith. And I hope that when you meet somebody who's a different faith from you, that you love them just the same and treat them as if they were just like family or friend. And just remember this story, because when the Germans did what they did to the Jews, it was horrible. But I'm just so glad that this story is a nice reminder of what they did to remember their own faith during hard times. And I hope you enjoy your day. And thank you for coming to story time with me.